Hi guys, Marcelo Nostroza here, and I'd like to welcome you to my review of Sherlock, Season 1, Episode 3, entitled The Greatest Game, featuring my friend, the Geek in Review. So without any further ado, I hope you enjoy our discussion. Well, Geek in Review, we finally made it to Episode 3 of Sherlock, Season 1, The Greatest Game. What were your initial thoughts of this episode when you first saw it?
When I first saw it, I don't really remember. I remember the cliffhanger ending, but a lot of the episode I'd honestly forgot. I'd forgot about how it was set up. I knew what the big sort of delivery was going to be in terms of the characters we're going to get, but the setup, I couldn't remember how it got there. So I was kind of shocked compared to the other two episodes how little that I did remember.
I haven't seen this episode in years until I saw it today. And one of the funniest things that I found about this episode is the way that it starts. Sherlock being so bored of not having something challenging to do, a particular case that challenges his intellect. He's basically shooting a weapon into the wall. What the hell is wrong with this guy?
Well, funny you should mention that scene because as soon as I watched it, and not obviously the setup with the Sherlock story or the character or anything like that, but just that scene made me think of like the 12 weeks of lockdown here that I had. There was just moments where I was going insane. I've put that in my notes about Sherlock's living in 2020, but he doesn't know it.
The part that always gets me is that when John finally makes his way up to the apartment and finally, confronts Sherlock, and Sherlock stands up and he says, "I'm bored. I'm bored. I'm bored. I'm bored. There's nothing to do." It's like he's like stir crazy.
Yeah, it was cabin fever, man. Like I say, they definitely struck a chord with how I was feeling around sort of May, June time last year. I just felt like I was going absolutely crazy and bored and couldn't do anything. So I completely empathized with that. But again, it was what was it, 11, 12 years ago that that episode aired, something like that.
The interesting thing about this particular scene is that we get a really nice glimpse into what Sherlock deems important. My brain is like a computer, and I only store stuff in my computer, or AKA my brain, that I need. Then John comes back with a clever retort. He says, "How can you not know about the solar system? This guy is a genius." In various parts in this episode, he can come off, or he comes off, as a dick.
Oh yeah, I think that's the charm of the character that he is a bit of a prick. I mean, they could have, if they really wanted to go the whole hog, if it had been remade a bit sooner, probably been a bit more, English about it. That sort of twirling tash English villain that was famous in the 90s in Hollywood films. They probably would have done that if they remade it any sooner. But yeah, I like that he can't be a likable character. That's what real people are like at the end of the day. We're three dimensional. You wake up on the wrong side of the bed and you're just like, I'm going to be a dick to everyone I speak to until I get something to eat. And then that's it.
Sherlock, in many ways, is a dick to everyone all the time. He has an insuperiority complex that he sees himself sort of above everyone else. Wouldn't you agree?
I would actually kind of argue that. I don't think that he sees that he's above everyone else. I think that he can't understand why other people don't utilize their minds the way that he does. So he just thinks that reading gossip mags and sitting talking about Star Trek isn't important when in the grander scheme of things. And he is right, but that humans need entertainment and distractions and things like that. But yeah, I think he's just annoyed that other people don't see things, aren't prepared to do what he does to get to see that point of view.
The end button to the scene is basically John goes out of the apartment, and when John leaves, a bomb goes off that triggers this cascade of events of several different people in London having bombs strapped on their bodies, and it's Sherlock's job to figure out who strapped these bombs on these people's bodies and why. What did you think about that entire setup?
I forgot about that setup completely. It was a bit where Mycroft mentions the guy who's lost the USB drive, and I was like, all right, I remember what happens now. But the whole thing about the using civilians and all that, I'd forgotten about. I think definitely, maybe for all the Sherlocks, but definitely the first three episodes, it feels like the most sort of procedural in terms of like a normal TV cop kind of show that there's a mystery to solve. Whereas usually it's him revealing the mystery to you, but he doesn't know what's going on. So It was pretty good, but I think the first season of Sherlock, I'm skipping ahead a bit here, but it set up the formula of the first episode's really good, the second episode shit, and the third episode is depending 50-50 in my point of view.
It's interesting that you said that the third episode of a random season of Sherlock is very 50-50. I really thought that this episode was kind of overstuffed. Why do you think that Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat did that? Don't you think it would have been better for Mark and Stephen Moffat to tell a more straightforward story instead of taking the long way around?
Well, you've got to remember that going back to episode 1, Moriarty was mentioned, so we knew that we were going to get him in some kind of form at the very least. And I'll need to go back and check the dates again, but this episode to me, with the sort of a terrorist aspect of it, really felt like how the Joker was doing business in the Dark Knight, but the Joker was more physically doing it, whereas Moriarty was getting someone else, it was more the threat of it kind of thing. So I don't know if it was maybe they were kind of paralleling that, or maybe borrowing that kind of trope, because writers tend to do that. But I don't think it felt overstuffed. It was nice, and like I say, again, it felt like the story could have been adapted into any other character. It didn't feel specifically tied to Sherlock until you got to that big reveal at the end.
The mission that Mycroft sends Sherlock on really has no importance. When Sherlock gives Moriarty the disk drive with the codes to the nuclear weapons, what does Moriarty do? He tosses it into the pool. Could have just taken that out and had Moriarty torture these innocent people all across the city.
Moriarty with the nuclear codes is, he knows that if he has them, someone will always want them to wield that power. So it's better to have it and destroy it, like what they've done with the Infinity Stones in Endgame. Whereas we can use it once and then we won't touch it again, kind of thing. I think it was maybe that. I don't know.
What did you think of the overall performance of the actor who plays James Moriarty?
Yeah, he was good. I think Moriarty, though, he had to be over the top because Sherlock is so reserved. Again, it goes back to Batman and the Joker, that one has to be the counter opposite of the other. Did I like his performance? Yeah. Was I distracted by his eyebrows? Absolutely. I just couldn't, even like when I put it on, the thing going through the back of my head was, I'm going to stare at these eyebrows as soon as I see them. But yeah, it was good. I mean, you've got to, again, I know you didn't watch it originally, but at the time, people didn't know how big Sherlock was going to be. No one really knew who Benedict Cumberbatch was. It was this guy with a name that no one could say, and then the guy that was in The Office doing a show together, written by the guy that wrote Doctor Who. So no one knew. And then I think by the third episode, everyone was like, yeah, we need to see more of this. Absolutely.
When it came to the final set piece between Moriarty, Sherlock, and John Watson in the pool, the thing that really surprised me and took my breath away is when Moriarty basically kidnapped John Watson and put the explosive bomb vest on John Watson. Did you think for a split second back in the day that John Watson was going to die?
Maybe at the time, I think, yeah, because at the time I was, probably about 25, 26. And, you weren't really aware of the Hollywood machine. But now when you're watching things, you're just like, okay, this is what they're going to do to line up a sequel. So they're not going to kill this guy, or they can't kill this person. So now it would seem, I think, pretty obvious. But back in the day, I think there's a little, maybe 5-10% of me that'd be a good spin.
The thing that I like about Moriarty is that he has this way about him that he is sexually suggestive towards Sherlock Holmes. I'm a heterosexual man, but I just find that so odd. But when we're first introduced to Moriarty, although we don't know he's Moriarty, he's basically dressed up as a gay man dating poor Molly.
Well, going back to what you said a moment ago about Moriarty's sexuality, I think that's maybe one of his sort of tricks to test the water, to get in with people and just see, okay, how uncomfortable can I make a person, because that makes them more in control of the situation anyway. Just the dynamic between the actors and the characters, because they did work really well, and I don't think they've said they're never doing it again, but I don't think there's any plans to bring it back. It's just a shame that we didn't get more of this. We had to wait 2 or 3 years between it, because their careers, Benedict Cumberbatch's career took off overnight, pretty much, or over 3 weeks of when the first Sherlock was shown. And then, I think he played it very sensible in terms of the roles he took, and he's now kind of doing the big Hollywood things. But Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the first three. My favourite episode of Sherlock, though, is the first episode of season 2.
Back in the day, when you watched this series, did you know that they were going to come back for another season?
Yeah, by the end of the last episode, I knew there would have to be another one, but let's say for me, the middle episodes of Sherlock are always or the poorest, or certainly the most boring. So when it got to like, the second episode, I was like, that's okay. And then when it got to the third one, and then, you didn't know if you were going to get to see Moriarty, or it was going to be like, Luke at the end of Force Awakens, or the Joker card at the end of Batman Begins, that you just get this little second of them, and the next season will be introducing them. So I think they set it up as well as they could have, because they did have to answer a lot of questions, and compared to the cliffhangers that they would set up and how they would answer those questions later on, this one was pretty nicely tied together.
I think that'll do it for our reviews of Sherlock Season 1. My good friend Geek, if my audience want to reach out to you and want to check out the amazing videos that you make, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube at the Geek in Review, and you can find me on Twitter at the Geeks Reviews, which is all the one word. All
right, guys, that's a wrap on my discussions of Sherlock Season 1. In the process of editing this episode, I totally forgot to mention my grade for this episode. So if I had to give a grade for this episode, I would give it a 7 out of 10. On that same note, Geek, he gives this final episode of Season 1 an 8. If you have watched the previous episodes in this series, if you're wondering, Season 2 of our review series will come shortly. If you guys want to see my friend Geek in Reviews channel, I will put a link to his channel in the description below, and I also will put a link to his Twitter there as well. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, I'll see you when I see you.
So much happened here, and so much is about to.